The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. May 14, 2015. Chapter 70, The Final Showdown Between Light and Dark.
The idea of your magic being dispelled isn't all that bad given Iron Knuckles are immune, but not being able to transform makes this a lot harder than it should be, especially when two of them are attacking at the same time,
said Spike.
At least they aren't moving fast, so that gives me time to plan out my attacks accordingly,
I said.
Speed isn't what an Iron Knuckle is known for, but rather its immense power is feared,
said Spike.
How do you suppose this creature came into existence?
I asked.
It's said that it has lived for over 1,000 years waiting for someone worthy enough to come along, but I find that hard to believe, as surely the armor would have rusted out, thus rendering it useless. It was created specifically to protect something, as they were far too slow to be effective anywhere else, so they were regulated to the task of being a guardian. In a way, it's a shame, as the potential was high, yet this inherent flaw prevented them from being useful. Can you begin to imagine what they would be like if you had to face an entire army of them?
Asked Spike.
I'd rather not, because one is bad enough on its own, so dealing with dozens would be impossible to overcome,
I replied.
Until you discover their other weaknesses, and then it becomes a matter of taking advantage,
said Spike. I assumed an Iron Knuckle only had the one weakness aside from the slow speed, which revolved around being vulnerable upon slamming that axe it wields into the ground, but it looks like there are additional flaws which could give me the edge I need. The two Iron Knuckles appeared to be taking their sweet time, given how they hadn't even reached the middle of the room, so it gave me a couple of minutes to try and get some information.
Why didn't you mention those other weaknesses back in the Spirit Temple?
I asked.
It never dawned on me to think about them,
replied Spike.
Well, you've got some time now,
I said.
Most weapons and magic have no effect on them, but bombs and bomb churro have been known to be effective,
said Spike. He then saw my facial expression as one of annoyance, for he forgot about telling me this information before. So, he needed to come up with some other information, otherwise I'm in trouble.
There is one other weakness that is mostly a rumor, for no one has ever tried to see if it works, but they say that rain weakens them because their armor gets rusty. I know you have the Song of Storms, yet whether the rumor is accurate or not remains to be seen.
That does make sense, as they are walking pieces of armor, but did I want to risk playing a song where it does nothing? There was no time to find out, for the Iron Knuckles had finally reached my location, and began swinging their axes around, which I avoided with the utmost importance, because I don't want to be on the receiving end of one of those blows.
I'm thinking of sticking with the Master Sword, as I need the mirror shield for protection, I said. That would be best, as you want to keep yourself safe from those axes, but you could always use the Big Goron's sword instead, as it will defeat them in a faster fashion,
suggested Spike.
While it would make quick work of them, I'd prefer to have a shield on hand. Also, I'm thinking of fighting both at the same time rather than focusing on one Iron Knuckle, for if I ignore the other one, it could potentially make a sneak attack,
I said. Just thinking about being sliced in the back by one of those axes was enough to freak me out, and while I wanted to run away, there was no other choice but to keep on going, as I needed to save Twilight. At that moment, I began thinking about how she must be doing, and hopefully she hasn't been killed or anything, otherwise the bloodline of the royal family will cease to exist. Up in his throne room playing the pipe organ, the evil king gloated over all that he had accomplished during the past 7 years, and Twilight had to listen, for she had no other choice.
To think that it would take me such a long time before I could gather the remaining Triforce pieces, but I suppose fate works in very mysterious ways. Many have tried to conquer fate, but they all suffer as it's a divine force which can never be defeated. Once the pieces have merged into one, I shall gain the true force which will enable me to finally become master of all that I survey," said Tyrek.
"What you desire is beyond your understanding, Ganondorf," said Twilight.
"Care to enlighten me on such a boastful statement?"
asked Tyrek.
"The Triforce contains a power no one can understand, and the last time anyone used the true force was almost 1,000 years ago. No records from those ancient times have been kept, so the true nature of what you seek could bring our world to complete ruin. I must implore you once more to stop all of this before you get killed for wanting to defy the gods. Sunset Shimmer is going to be arriving soon, and know that she will do everything in her power to stop you. I do not even understand why you desired the sacred Triforce in the first place,"
replied Twilight.
"You of all people should know the reason,"
said Tyrek.
"Is it because your people have been suffering because of their crimes?"
asked Twilight.
"Crimes?
Such ignorance! 4 generations, the Hylians along with the other tribes mistreated the Gerudo all because of what they chose believe in, and were prosecuted. Yet, that is not the real travesty, as there is a much deeper tension. My kingdom of the desert. While it may be vast in scope, the harsh conditions are something you Hylians have never witnessed in your pampered lives.
Every night, the cold winds would blow throughout our homes, and death was sure to follow. Food was scarce, and our population dwindled because of how the Gerudo consist entirely of women with one man born every century. On the other side of the desert were the grassy plains of Hyrule that featured much warmer winds,"
replied Tyrek.
"Do you expect any sympathy from me because of those lies?"
asked Twilight.
"Lies? There is much about this kingdom which has eluded your intelligence, little princess,"
replied Tyrek.
"I will not stand idly by, and allow you to insult the land my father worked so hard to bring to life. He even wanted your people to become a part of the unification, yet you chose to murder him in cold blood. If I had known much sooner, I would have had the castle guards capture you, and the punishment would have been execution. Had you decided to be honest about the alliance instead of being so treacherous, our world could have become so much better,"
said Twilight.
"He was weak and so oblivious to what was going on around him,"
said Tyrek.
"Gasp! You go too far!"
shouted Twilight.
"Not far enough, my dear Zelda, for your father never told you about what transpired before the unification,"
said Tyrek.
"What are you talking about?"
asked Twilight.
"So, he kept this secret all the way to his grave, and didn't once share such knowledge with you, so it falls onto me to explain what he chose to hide, which brought him nothing but eternal shame. I'm certain you know all about the war which took place 17 years before this kingdom came into existence? You were merely a mewling child back then, so the Sheikah woman most likely explained much of its history to you, but I doubt she revealed the dark secret your father committed just before the war ended,"
replied Tyrek.
"Yes, I know about what took place during those dark times, for it was my duty to be informed of such matters. The war was truly a devastation to all who were involved, all because they allowed their deepest desires to get the better of them," said Twilight. "It was because you Hylians chose to seal the Triforce away because you feared it would be abused. Whether your people wanted to use its power for yourselves is of no consequence to me, yet what your father did to the Dark Tribe is a different matter. Yes, there was once a tribe who dedicated themselves to the intricacies of the darkness, and desired the Triforce. Just because they used an ancient magic foreign in nature made them a threat to your father's ideology of a unified kingdom, and he pleaded to the goddesses to intervene on his behalf. The Dark Tribe weren't merely punished for their actions. No, they were banished from this existence into a world on the other side of shadows,"
said Tyrek.
"This can't be true,"
shouted Twilight.
"Your father had an entire tribe banished, and pleaded for the tribal leaders to never reveal this secret. If the people became aware of what he had done, I am certain your family would have been ousted from their position of power. In order to protect his authority, he chose to bury this truth so that it could never come back to haunt him. Since I did not align myself with him, I need not hold back. Now you know the secret your father kept from you, so think about what it really means. I will leave you to wallow in what you've finally been exposed to, and the kid will eventually reach us here at the top of my tower. My servants are giving her a difficult time, but she will prevail, for I know she is destined to come here before me,"
said Tyrek.
"Father, what happened back then? Why banish an entire tribe?"
said Twilight.
"My reign over this world shall never end, and once I claim the true force, all will finally become mine,"
said Tyrek. Using the Master Sword against these two iron knuckles was certainly better than using the Kokiri sword, but while it would be nice using the big Goron's sword just to defeat them quickly, I didn't want to run the risk of losing too much health. I can afford to get killed once because of having a fairy, but I won't be able to come back from a second death. So far, I was holding my own, having damaged their respective armor plates a few times in the hopes of knocking them off and thus exposing their weak points.
"If you keep alternating between them like this, you'll eventually remove the armor plates,"
said Spike.
"I'm not sure if I'll last much longer," I said. "You've got a fairy on hand, so you don't need to feel worried about surviving until the fairy is used up," said Spike. "It's not that," I began. "Then what is it?" asked Spike. "I've been struggling to dodge their attacks given how frequent they are, and it's gotten to the point where I'm getting tired. I know this is something I've never mentioned before, yet now is the right time to bring it up. I can only go so far before finding myself exhausted, and that moment is fast approaching. These iron knuckles never get tired, but I need to rest because if I keep going at this pace, I'm liable to experience a heart attack," I replied. "Aren't you capable of running around a lot given you're a pony?" asked Spike. "I haven't been one since I left Equestria," I replied. I then explained to Spike that just because I could run on 4 hooves in Equestria doesn't make me an expert in running around. In fact, I rarely did that much running as I was more fixated on improving my magic. "I suggest you don't get exhausted, otherwise both iron knuckles will take full advantage," said Spike. "It also doesn't help that I've been awake a lot longer than usual," I said. "Are you saying you need sleep?" asked Spike. "That would be nice right about now," I replied. While I was thinking about the idea of going into Dreamland given how exhausted I felt at this point, I failed to notice one of the iron knuckles broke off from the other, and walked around behind me before swinging its axe, which caught me by surprise. The blow knocked me back a short distance, and my heart quickly sank upon realizing that my sword arm was bleeding very badly as a result of this hit. Without the ability to swing a sword, the chances of achieving victory were growing dim,
but then I remember what Spike said about using bombs and bomb chua to attack from a distance.
That last strike really did some serious damage to your sword arm,
said Spike.
Blame it on me being so exhausted,
I said.
If you consume one of those potions, it should stop the bleeding, although it will take a few hours for the wound to heal,
said Spike.
I don't have such a luxury given how close we are to reaching Ganondorf at the top of the tower, so I'm going to take advantage of their other weakness that involves the use of explosives,
I said.
Why not try playing the Song of Storms?
Asked Spike.
Making it rain to slow them down would be a good idea, but then with my arm currently banged up, reducing their mobility isn't going to be useful, especially when I can't use my sword,
I replied. When the iron knuckle struck my sword arm, I dropped the master sword on the ground, and while I was worried about the divine blade being trodden on or even destroyed, they completely ignored it as they were focused primarily on killing me because of being commanded to do so. As I struggled to find where on my person the bomb chua were located, I failed to notice one of the iron knuckles having walked up to me, and slamming its axe down, slashing me in the chest. This caused me to flying across the room and into a wall, injuring my back at the same time, but when I dropped to the floor below, I managed to discover the mobile bombs.
Why is it that I had trouble finding where I placed them on my person? You'd think they would be easy enough for me to pull out given how I've been doing so with my other weapons without any difficulty. You are carrying a lot of items around,
commented Spike.
Some are easy to find as they're located either on my belt or on my back, yet others I've had to spend several minutes trying to figure out where I placed them. I seriously need some kind of multiple pouch system to make such a transition flawless,
I moaned.
Such a concept did used to exist back in the ancient days, but was soon abandoned as the idea of someone carrying a lot of items around disappeared, all because people only carry around basic tools with which to carry out their daily tasks. Legends even say that there was a special storage facility that was dedicated to storing items so that anyone could come along and switch them at will whenever they needed one thing and could deposit another item,
said Spike.
Why was this practice stopped?
I asked.
Again, not many people carried around that many items,
replied Spike. I had to smack myself in the forehead, for it should be plain common sense to have a storage facility as well as pouches to carry lots of items around so as to not feel confused as to where you placed everything on your person. For such a magical world as Hyrule, it acted like it were a backwater society if they didn't embrace something so obvious and essential to many. It was a miracle that these items never caused me to drown underwater, or made me plunge into a pit of lava when I jumped from one platform to the next. I'm just shocked that they even considered retiring such a useful idea, but maybe I'll bring this up with Twilight, and hopefully she can bring it back so that future generations don't have to deal with what I'm experiencing right now. While I love using all of my weapons, having to constantly switch between them can be cumbersome, especially when in the heat of battle, so it would be nice if I could store them away until I have need of them again. After checking and feeling different parts of my body, I finally found where I placed the bomb chua, where again I smacked myself in the forehead.
Here they are,
I moaned.
Why did you smack yourself again?
Asked Spike.
Because I placed in an easy-to-reach location on my person,
I replied. When one iron knuckle began to change tactics in the hopes of catching me off guard, I took out a bomb churro and immediately dropped it where it sailed along the ground before exploding into it.
That didn't do much damage,
I said.
Bomb churro are exactly like bombs with the ability of being mobile, yet both pale in comparison with the Master Sword,
said Spike.
Guess I've got to constantly use them if I want to prevail, I said. Because they are large targets, you won't have much trouble hitting them. However, I advise you to take it slowly, otherwise you'll end up missing often, and if you run out of them, then it will fall down to using actual bombs," said Spike.
"Those will be effective, I know, but the thought of having to get close to an iron knuckle is something I'd rather soon avoid if I can." The one I had just damaged turned its attention towards me before slamming its axe down, which I avoided easily, so in response I used a few more bomb chew, making sure to take it slowly as Spike suggested. Each bomb connected with it, causing more damage to the armor, yet it still wasn't enough, which felt vexing, but I knew that if I continue with this unusual method, I will eventually remove the plate.
"Will this strategy work when they start running?"
I asked.
"Running for an iron knuckle is the equivalent of a brisk jog to you, so it won't make much difference," replied Spike.
Knowing this, I continued with the assault, dropping bomb chew after bomb chew where they sailed along the ground, and connected with the iron knuckle, who probably doesn't like being blown up so many times, but this was all I could do until my arm has been healed. I also found it strange how I can even plant these explosives on the ground despite my injury, and Spike gave me a pretty good explanation.
"Compared with the Master Sword, these little guys are extremely light, so you're not giving your arm additional pressure." "That explains a lot then," I said. "I doubt these are going to be helpful against Ganondorf, so by all means use as many as you want," said Spike.
While I was focusing on this one iron knuckle, the other had been walking towards me in a different direction, and by the time I took notice, it swung its axe, which struck in the side with so much force that it almost felt like being sliced in half. Instead though, it merely caused me to go flying across the room again, and landing close to one of the walls. As I struggled to get back onto my feet, the first one walked towards me, and swung its axe, striking me in the chest. While I didn't go flying after being hit, the damage was adding up, and it was a good thing I had the defense enhancement from a dojo, otherwise I would have been killed quite some time ago.
"One more hit like that, and I'll be using that fairy," I said. "Which is good, because if you didn't have it then you would get killed on the next blow," said Spike. "I really need to watch where both of them are moving, as I'm being blindsided by one of them," I moaned. "If you can corral them together, then you can damage them both at the same time," suggested Spike.
That was a pretty good idea, so when I got back up, I began to move about, causing the iron knuckles to follow closely. With this little maneuver having worked, I continued dropping bomb chew, which damaged both repeatedly until the armor of one of them fell off, exposing its weak point. It then started to run faster, thus moving away from the other one, but I had to corral them back before things could turn against me. It wasn't easy, as the fast one kept on getting ahead, but once I was determined they were close together, I resumed with the bomb chew, giving them little room to make a counterattack. After a few more explosions, the first iron knuckle finally went down, and as it burned away to nothing, it made me feel a little bad that they have to go in such a rather morbid fashion.
"That's one down, although did it have to fall like that?"
I asked.
"It's just their nature of being bested," replied Spike. "I never realized just how gruesome this journey was," I said. "Defeating those monsters can give off that kind of emotional baggage, Sunset Shimmer, but you need to realize that most were created by powerful magic. Ganondorf created the majority of the creatures we've seen, yet some were real, although he most likely altered them in a bid to make them stronger than usual. There is no need to feel guilty over defeating countless monsters, because most were merely given life by magic," said Spike. "Ganondorf created them?" I asked. He took advantage of the darkness, and created monsters which would serve his will. Back in the past, he was limited with what he could do because of not having enough power, so when he claimed the Triforce of Power, he was able to create more monsters than ever before, and even ones which were stronger than anything previously seen.
Replied Spike.
No wonder I've been struggling against certain creatures,
I said. If I had known this a long time ago, I could have done something in my previous battle with him in order to stop the plethora of monsters which constantly got in my way. It would have made things so much easier for me, but on the other hand, I wouldn't have grown so much on a spiritual level had I not been given difficult challenges. The other iron knuckle had finally managed to reach my location, yet I was prepared for it by using more bomb chew. Since there was only one left, I didn't have to worry about being blindsided. After blowing this one up a few times with my explosives, its armor plate fell off, and started to run faster where it began swinging its axe around, which I avoided by the smallest of margins. It then slammed its axe into the ground, which I dodged by moving backwards because I needed to get some distance. Once I was far enough from it, I continued to use the bomb chew, although by this point I had no idea how many I had left.
How many do I suppose I've got?
I asked.
I did take count of how many you dropped, and you've got about 5 left, which should be enough. If you end up running out before it goes down, you'll have to switch to regular bombs.
Replied Spike. 5 left wasn't much, but it should be enough to defeat it. As I prepared another one, the iron knuckle came up, and struck me in the chest, causing me to drop my bomb chew, which exploded on impact. The irony was that the explosion defeated it, but I slumped to the ground having been killed, and while it was burning away, the fairy in my bottle freed itself somehow and brought me back to life, which healed all of my wounds except my sword arm. It still needs time to heal, which means I'm not going any further despite both doors now being unlocked.
That was the last hit?
I asked.
And you took damage at the exact same time, which was enough to kill you,
replied Spike.
I feel so annoyed that I was forced to use a fairy like that,
I moaned.
Be thankful you had one,
said Spike.
Oh, I am, but it's the principle of the thing,
I moaned.
The way forward is now open, so we should keep going until we can find the locked door,
suggested Spike.
I'm not going to continue without having more potions, as a blue potion and a green potion aren't going to be enough to see me through to the end. Besides, I can't fight Ganondorf with my sword arm being the way it is, and for that I need rest if I want it to heal properly. I just hope that Twilight can last long enough, because who knows what he is doing up there with her,
I said.
You don't have enough rupees though,
said Spike.
I also don't have any more Deku sticks and Deku nuts which I can give to Ms. Cheerilly. So, I guess I'm going to have to go back and collect some of those fairies unless she is willing to give me a special deal,
I said. It then dawned on me that I had to backtrack, and I wasn't looking forward to the idea. Sighing, I started making my way back down to the main area of the castle, all the while wondering what was happening with Twilight, because who knows what Ganondorf is doing to her. If my sword arm was still working properly, I wouldn't need to rest, yet I have to if I want it to make a recovery, so I'm hoping she is okay.
The kid has defeated all of my servants,
said Tyrek.
You should be afraid, Ganondorf, because she is now coming for you,
said Twilight.
I am surprised that you recovered from knowing the truth about the actions committed by your father, but then you do possess a strong spirit. Of course, such strength is irrelevant compared to true power. Also, why would I fear a child who clearly has no idea what she is doing? I have been watching her ever since she returned from the sacred realm, and her skills could do with refining,"
said Tyrek.
"Sunset Shimmer isn't quite the hero I was expecting, but she has a strong heart. I know destiny did not choose poorly when she was chosen to become the hero of time, and the Master Sword found her worthy enough to wield it, which is something most people will never achieve in their lifetime. I would not underestimate her, Ganondorf, because doing so would cause your death,"
said Twilight.
"I know far better than you know, Zelda,"
began Tyrek.
"How do you figure that?"
asked Twilight.
"This kid possesses a magic which is foreign to this world. One which I sensed a long time ago when I caught glimpse of her staring at me through that window in the courtyard of your former home.
It caught my interest because it was one that nearly rivaled my own, so I knew it needed to be tested in the only manner which was deemed worthy enough. Through combat."
"Zelda, I was aware of your plan to try and prevent me from claiming the Triforce, yet you never knew about my plan to see what kind of power the kid had. I intended on challenging her when she had pulled the Master Sword from the pedestal of time, for my intention was to see if she could perhaps be turned to darkness, for she possessed an evil taint in her heart,"
replied Tyrek.
"I did not know this,"
said Twilight.
"It seems you are not the only one who chooses to keep secrets,"
laughed Tyrek.
"Maybe she used to have an evil heart, but she has become much stronger, and no longer walks the path of darkness. None of your manipulations will make her want to become your servant,"
said Twilight.
"Yes, her will cannot succumb to dark temptations, although her dark self did attempt to do exactly that. It was most amusing to see those two at each other's throats, because the dark form desired to consume the life of the other, and the light form wished to maintain her existence, for she had earned that right. Of course, I could have killed the she-demon a long time ago, but she proved to be useful. The only true purpose that one ever had was to constantly see if the kid could continue getting stronger until she was truly worthy of my attention. Her death was merely a coincidence which serves as a reminder that anyone who chooses to defy me shall end up suffering severe consequences,"
said Tyrek.
"Only you would have such an ulterior motive, but the she-demon needed to be dealt with as she posed a significant threat. Do not try to deny this, because you know just how powerful she could have become had the Triforce fallen into her hands. Sunset Shimmer's dark side is one that desired power, and for that she was willing to do whatever was necessary to claim it, even kill her true self. It is regretful that she possessed such a twisted soul within her heart, but perhaps now her life will not be bogged down by such a hateful creature,"
said Twilight.
"Such loyal words to one whose life shall end by my hands,"
said Tyrek.
"We shall see,"
said Twilight.
"When the kid's life has been snuffed out, I shall claim the Triforce piece that she wields. After I have that in my hands, I shall turn to you, Zelda, and claim the piece you hold, which means your life shall soon come to an end,"
said Tyrek. Even though it took me an hour to make it back to the hidden shop, I was fortunate no monsters attacked me, because I'm not able to wield a weapon until my arm has healed. It did take me a few minutes to remember exactly where the entrance to the shop was, around the base of the tower, and when I found it, I walked inside, where the business scrubs looked a little shocked.
"I knew you would come back to our shop,"
said Cheerilly.
"I'm here for more fairies,"
I said.
"Take as many as you need, because you look as though the tower gave you a difficult time, and I wouldn't be surprised if you told me you used half of your bottled contents,"
said Cheerilly.
"I've got a blue potion and a green potion," I said. "Which explains why you feel the need to get some fairies rather than purchase our wares,"
said Cheerilly.
I don't have enough rupees, and I know you can't afford to lower your prices even more than you already have,
I said.
True, because we sell our wares in an effort to make money, and selling for cheap just isn't a good business practice. Those nuts and sticks you gave us will prove useful for our other clients, and no doubt they will pay handsomely, so we'll benefit in the end. I did notice that your right arm looks like it may have been damaged heavily by some kind of powerful weapon,
said cheerily.
Those iron knuckles gave me trouble,
I said.
I had a feeling those armored warriors would do that, but you were fortunate enough to have defeated them, and almost losing your arm instead of your life,
said cheerily. Losing my arm would be just as bad as losing my life, as the thought was too horrifying for me to think about, so I decided to focus on collecting a couple of fairies. I even chose to allow some of the other fairies to touch me in order to restore my health, just in case the one I used in the tower didn't get the job done. That's when I asked Ms. Cheerily about resting for a few hours in the shop, and she was rather surprised.
You seriously want to sleep inside of this castle? You really are one strange forest girl, that's for sure, as no one would ever consider sleeping here. But I suppose it won't do any harm, although you are taking a risk because we can't be held responsible. I just need to rest for a few hours until my sword arm heals,
I said.
Yeah, it has seen better days,
said cheerily.
If you'd like, I could pay you some money in order to rest here for a while,
I suggested.
You don't have enough rupees to do that, and taking advantage of someone who is in poor condition, which would leave a bad taste in my mouth. Like I said, it won't do any harm, although that's just my opinion, but my fellow business scrubs may not appreciate you hanging around the shop sleeping, even if it is for a few hours. I'll ask what they think, so give me a few minutes,
said cheerily. She then waddled over to where the other scrubs were, which looked strange as I didn't think they could move about on legs, what with being plants, but she began talking to them in order to see how they felt about me resting. I couldn't understand what they were saying as it sounded like utter gibberish, yet their flailing arms indicated they were having some issues. If I have to leave the castle and seek a place to rest, I'm not sure if my arm can take it, because it really needs to recover. Cheerily walked back over to me, yet I could see she was smiling. So did that mean I could rest here?
Sorry about the arguing, as they were nervous about us being discovered down here by Ganondorf, but they do agree that you can rest here, but the only condition is that you need to rest over there in the corner. While we may not get customers, we still have to do our daily inventory checks to make certain we still have plenty of stock, and having a sleeping girl in our way will just cause problems. That's fine,
I said.
Hopefully, none of the patrols discovers this location,
said cheerily.
Patrols?
I asked.
Every few hours, a group of monsters goes around the castle, and anyone intruders are killed. If this group discovers our hidden shop, we will immediately run away because we prefer to keep our lives intact, and that means you'll have to deal with them provided you're actually awake. Hopefully, the patrol won't be coming around,
replied cheerily. While it was disheartening to hear Ms. Cheerily of all people choosing to run away because she would be the last person to ever consider such a thing, I can understand how they live an existence that revolves around surviving. Agreeing with this condition because I had no other choice, I walked over to the corner of the room, and slumped down against the wall where I closed my eyes. As I slept, the business scrubs performed their inventory check in silence, as they knew about my need for silence, and I dreamt about how my upcoming battle with Ganondorf was going to turn out. My dream at times would try to become a nightmare, but I managed to repress these twisted thoughts, as my fears mustn't get the best of me. A few hours would soon pass, and when I awoke from my slumber, My sword arm had fully healed, although I should try not to use it straight away in case I have a relapse.
That rest really did a number for me, I said. You made no noises at all when you were in the corner, and I'll admit that you did look adorable,
said Cheerily.
How long was I asleep for?
I asked.
About 4 hours,
replied Cheerily.
Exactly what I was going for, I said. Not sure if you'll end up falling asleep later, but I suppose you can't afford to rest given who is waiting for you. I have no idea what you're going to encounter, so all I can do is wish you the best of luck. I don't know why, but you remind me of something which seems like only a dream, but I won't bother going into the details as you don't have the time to listen to what could essentially be a dull story coming from the mouth of a scrub,
said Cheerily. I had a feeling she was trying to remember something from the human world, but because she doesn't have equestrian magic inside of her like my friends and I do, what she said was exactly that, merely a dream which she probably doesn't understand. Thanking her once again for helping me out, I began the trek back to where I had gotten to inside of the tower before having to leave prematurely.
My arm feels so much better, I said. Hopefully you're now ready for Ganondorf,
said Spike.
As ready as I'll ever be, although I'm still curious as to what this boss key is needed for,
I said.
It's strange you received one when you defeated those Stalfos, so that would indicate there is a locked door ahead,
said Spike.
And because I had to defeat the monsters on each level to unlock the way forward, the chances of getting this key were 100% given it was right there in the open. Then again, I could have ignored it because of wanting to reach Ganondorf, and arriving at the door without the key would have been a real crushing blow. Well, not that big of one as I'd just go back down a level and pick it up,
I said.
Make sure you have the light arrows ready as you'll need them to penetrate his dark magic,
said Spike.
Then it's good I purchased some at the shop, otherwise the battle would be over before it even began,
I said. When I finally made it back to the room where I had defeated the 2 iron knuckles, I walked across where I opened the door and entering the next room, I found myself staring at yet another staircase, yet the sounds coming from the organ up top were loud.
That music gets louder as we continue climbing higher up the tower, and it makes me nervous because we both know who is playing it. There's no turning back now,
said Spike.
Of course, because this needs to end now, I said.
Eventually, we came to a rather large door which had a massive lock on it.
This must be where that boss key is meant to be used. He's not being subtle, that's for certain,
said Spike.
No telling what lies behind it, I said. Are you ready?
asked Spike.
I've got everything I need, and I'm guessing that once I enter this door, there is no turning back,
I replied.
The main thing to remember is this battle is similar to the one you had against Phantom Ganon according to what Neburu said, but at the same time it will be much harder as that ghost was merely an extension of the evil king. I don't meant to sound so pessimistic at this point, but it's the only means I had on hand to explain the situation,
said Spike.
It's okay, Spike, for you said what I would have done if I were in your position, I said. Thanks, Sunset Shimmer,
smiled Spike.
My last battle with him ended up with me being sealed away for 7 years, yet I've no intention of losing again,
I said. Taking out the boss key and unlocking the door, I breathed heavily for a few moments due to who was waiting on the side, but when I entered the next room, I was in complete shock over what I wasn't seeing.
Hey! I could have sworn Ganondorf was located on the other side of this door, yet there's nothing in here apart from a column which looks like I can climb up it, and some ledges with a large number of jars that probably have something in them.
There was another door to the right of where I had entered, yet what piqued my interest were two entrances which had iron bars blocking the way. Could these be alternative routes? I'm not sure why Ganondorf would want to have other pathways, but maybe I can find another use for them later. Since I had no need to shatter those jars because I was fully stocked as it were, I decided to go for the other door as there was nothing else of particular note until Spike brought something up which surprised me due to ignoring it.
Listen. You can hear the music from that organ coming from the ceiling,
said Spike.
Does that mean?
I asked.
Ganondorf is right above us,
replied Spike.
Yet why have a room like this? Was this meant to be some kind of joke in order to lull me into a false sense of security, or perhaps there is much more than what can be seen right now? Also, did you notice those entrances which have been blocked by iron bars? I was thinking that maybe there were alternate routes, and could come in handy later,
I said.
They will be very useful because those are meant to be used in case you wanted to escape from the castle,
said Spike.
Why would he have these?
I asked.
Good question, as I doubt he has any real use for them,
replied Spike.
It's as though the evil king knows something could happen, so he made sure to have escape routes just in case,
I suggested.
But what would cause him to use them?
Asked Spike.
Like you said, he doesn't need an escape route, but who's to say that I can't use them? When he is defeated and Twilight has been rescued, I'd rather not take her all the way back down through the castle in case more monsters appear. So, I can take her through one of these passageways, although I haven't quite figured out how I'm supposed to open them,
I replied. Again, I had to ignore these paths as there is nothing I can do about them, so I walked towards the other door where I opened it, and entered the next room where even more stairs awaited.
Guess we have a long walk ahead of us,
said Spike.
I do because you can fly,
I moaned.
The music is getting even louder,
said Spike.
Which means the next room is going to be his throne room, but why did it have to be up another flight of stairs? Who in their right mind would need this many stairs? He really needed an elevator so that this could have been so much easier,
I moaned. Well, if he ever wanted to get some exercise, running up and down all of these stairs would be a great routine for him, but it wasn't the same for me as I have all of this equipment which does make climbing stairs more difficult than it ought to be. Sighing, I began running up the stairs as I didn't want to drag this out, yet as I was making my way upward, the music from the organ continued to get louder with every passing moment, and for some reason it was getting brighter as though I were reaching something majestic. After what felt like forever, I finally reached my destination, which consisted of a simple door.
I can sense an evil coming from within which is more powerful than anything we've experienced,
said Spike.
The locked door should have been here instead,
I moaned.
It would have made more sense, but that's a moot point at best. After all of the hardships which have befallen us throughout this journey, Sunset Shimmer, we've finally reached the end at long last. All you need to do now is go through and face Ganondorf with Hyrule's fate hanging in the balance. I'll be with you during this battle, so I'll do everything in my power to ensure success,
said Spike.
No need for any pressure now, as I don't need it,
I said.
Sorry,
said Spike.
Hopefully my transformation doesn't end up going wrong like it did last time,
I said. Breathing heavily once again, I opened the door and entered Ganondorf's throne room, where my jaw dropped almost immediately. To my right was his actual throne, and it looked demonic, which made sense given how he has a strong alignment with evil. The organ possessed a rather archaic presence while covering up much of the back wall of the room, but it was the one playing who filled my heart with dread. Sitting there was Ganondorf himself, the man who had caused so much pain and suffering to countless people. He ignored me even though I was standing behind him, yet I knew he would turn around to face me when he was ready. Floating above him was Twilight, who was still trapped inside of that prism, and while it was horrifying to see her imprisoned in such a manner, at least she remained unharmed. It looked as though she had something to say given how her mouth was trying to move, yet nothing happened, for it looked like she was not strong enough. All of a sudden, the music came to a stop, and Ganondorf lowered his head before he started to speak, which kept me on edge, as who knows what he will do.
"I've been waiting for you, kid,"
said Tyrek.
"The feeling isn't mutual,"
I said.
"Even now you continue to amuse me with your acts of bravado, but I suppose it was all you could do as your life was threatened constantly. I knew you would make it here as you possessed the determination to rescue Zelda, yet you needed to be tested so that I could confirm if you were worthy enough to face me once again in battle. Even though you possess the Triforce of Courage, that alone would not have been enough, and if you believed you could reach me using its divine power, I would have killed you upon entering my throne room. Once again, you have passed my expectations, kid, which isn't surprising given your accomplishments, yet know that I will not grant mercy to you,"
said Tyrek.
"That battle with you is something which I've been thinking about for quite some time,"
I said.
"Yes, you were determined to prevent me from claiming the Triforce, but in the end you failed as my power was too much. It also helped that I was aware of what the Master Sword would do because I made certain to learn of its arcane secrets. However, you were the first person who inflicted me with a serious wound when you transformed into that stronger form of yours. Such a power like that rivaled my own, for it was one I didn't expect to witness. Ever since I first saw you back in Hyrule Castle when you were spying on me, I sensed you possessed a magic which was foreign in nature. From that moment on, you piqued my interest, although in my eyes you were merely a forest girl who hoped to achieve greatness,"
said Tyrek.
"Back then, I had no idea what I was doing because I had been plunged into this world against my will, and I had to adapt quickly if I were to fulfill my destiny as the one who would save Hyrule. Of course, I got better, although it took me quite some time. My experiences in the past weren't all that good as I was so inexperienced, but ever since returning from the Sacred Realm, my skills have constantly improved, yet I still have some issues,"
I said.
"So, you are from a different world,"
said Tyrek.
"I thought if anyone figured that out, you would be one of the first,"
I said.
"Zelda informed me of such matters, although much she refused to reveal, so I had to be more persuasive. Reading her mind proved challenging as she struggled to resist my magic, but in the end such resistance is futile, and her secrets became known,"
said Tyrek. I then turned my attention to Twilight, who was still struggling to tell me something, yet she looked really out of it. If only I had gotten here a lot sooner, she wouldn't have had to go through such a painful experience. Just knowing this enraged me, but I had to maintain my composure as I can't afford to lose control of my emotions in such a crucial encounter, yet Ganondorf can sense this inner turmoil. He might try to take advantage of my feelings, but I'm not about to be manipulated by him anymore given what he has already done.
"If you believe Zelda is suffering, kid, then you need not be concerned, for I have no intention of killing her. At least not until I have acquired what I need from her, and from you." "I don't have the Triforce of Courage," I said. "One thing you're not good at, kid, is lying, for I know you possess one of the missing pieces I've sought. Zelda herself has the other one, and together with the piece I hold, the miracle that is said to happen will begin shortly,"
said Tyrek.
"It sounds more like a nightmare," I said. "You doubt my words? Then look at your right hand, and see the truth with your own eyes,"
suggested Tyrek. I then looked at Twilight, who was now staring at her own hand, and this prompted me to inspect my own. At first, nothing happened and I felt he was merely trying to stall for time, but then a mark began forming on the back of my hand, which reminded me of when I first got my cutie mark. When I first received that particular mark, I was excited because I knew what was going to happen, although I had no idea what it was going to look like. Yet this mark is one which has resulted because of being chosen to wield the Triforce of Courage. No one said anything about having a mark, nor did they tell me I was a chosen one, but I couldn't look away from my hand as my eyes were fixated on it. The mark then appeared on my hand with the bottom right triangle glowing, which must be the Triforce of Courage. Twilight then received the exact same mark on the back of her hand, and the triangle on the lower left of it then glowed, representing her piece, the Triforce of Wisdom. Ganondorf meanwhile continued to have his back to me, but I knew he was aware that our marks have now appeared, and no doubt he had one as well, because he was holding the remaining piece.
"The Triforce parts are resonating. They are combining into one again. Is this what you've been waiting for?"
I asked.
"For 7 years, the three parts have been separate from one another, and now the true force has been formed.
Now, it is merely a matter of making another wish, yet it appears fate was working against me. The two Triforce parts that I could not capture on that day, I never would have guessed they would be hidden within you too."
"I assumed you were nothing more than a forest girl who was too engrossed with the world beyond the safety of the trees, and I believed Zelda was just as weak as her father was because of how he desired to unite all of the tribes under the Hylian banner. If I had known about what you two would obtain, my desire could have been fulfilled much sooner,"
replied Tyrek.
"I never guessed I'd be chosen," I said. "Destiny has been keeping much from you, kid,"
said Tyrek.
"At first I was willing to give this piece of the Triforce to you because I believed it was a mistake that it was given to me, but after thinking about it for a while, I've come to embrace being one of the chosen," I said. "What my mother's told me about you has become even more true than previously expected. There is something about you, kid, which makes you radiate with a power that is similar to, yet different from my own, and it makes me wonder what could have happened had you chosen to become my faithful servant. Or, had the she-demon succeeded, you would have left this world behind to conquer other lands. Despite their constant failures which resulted in their deaths, my mothers were wise to keep me informed of the progress that was being made by you,"
said Tyrek.
"So you knew everything I did?"
I asked.
"Your movements were always being watched because while I allowed you to run around freely, I needed to watch you closely as I was curious as to how much stronger you would get. Now the time has come for me to see just how powerful you are, kid, and I know deep down you desire our contest to begin without any further delay. I've waited for the chance to battle you again, but there is something which needs to be addressed,"
replied Tyrek. He then got up from his seat, which made me draw the Master Sword, and get my mirror shield ready because he was about to make his move. Suddenly, he laughed while casting his cape back before turning around to face me. Just like everyone else, Ganondorf has aged 7 years, although it looks as though he hasn't really changed all that much.
"These toys are too much for you. The Triforce can only be wielded by one who has the power to control it without any opposition, so I command you to return them to me. Do not act foolish, kid, as my power is even greater than last time. I'm ready to face you,
I said boldly.
Zelda shall watch these proceedings, for once I have killed you, she shall die next, and then the true force shall become mine. I would begin by using my dark magic to prevent that fairy of yours from interfering, but you are unaffected by the darkness, so your partner can assist you as much as possible," said Tyrek.
I had no idea if he was taking this seriously or trying to trick me, but I had no time to think about it because he then started to float into the air like he was a Pegasus. Ganondorf suddenly slammed his fist into the ground where half of the floor gave way, exposing the room down below, and I struggled with keeping myself from falling down.
"Get back!"
shouted Spike.
"No need to repeat that,"
I shouted as I moved backwards towards the door.
"Did that catch you by surprise, kid? Now you know a small sample of my power, and there is much more for you to experience before you die. Do not betray my expectations because you do not want to disappoint Zelda, for she gets to witness what will transpire here. This will be a different experience than what you had 7 years ago,"
said Tyrek.
"What can you tell me about Ganondorf?"
I asked.
"I have no idea what his weak point is,"
replied Spike.
"Seriously?"
I asked.
"He is someone who keeps such information a secret, so you'll need to figure out when to make use of the light arrows. You know they will be effective, but until you know the right moment, don't waste them as you only have 50 arrows, and you need to conserve your magic even though you have potions which can restore it,"
replied Spike.
"I'm guessing magic will do nothing?"
I asked.
"He is immune to all forms of magic with the exception of light, so don't bother trying to use anything else. This also includes magical weapons unless they are imbued with light. Do you remember how you battled against Phantom Ganon? The same principle is going to be happening here, at least during the early stages of the battle. Ganondorf was watching that fight with that ghost, so he knows the skills you used against it, so he will likely switch tactics. I have no idea what else he has in store for you, so all you can do is try your best to keep up with him,"
replied Spike. I remember how the ghost threw magical energy balls at me, which went back and forth as we both hit it in an attempt to inflict damage to one another, so it looks like he will be using a similar fashion, which should provide an ideal advantage. Then again, the evil king is stronger than his phantom ever was, which will make this a much harder experience.
"Your little fairy has certainly given you some wise advice, kid,"
said Tyrek.
"He has helped me out more times than I can count,"
I said.
"Such loyalty, yet misguided, for he has been giving help to a corpse,"
laughed Tyrek.
"I'm not going to be dying anytime soon,"
I shouted.
"We shall find out soon enough,"
said Tyrek. He then raised his hand, which conjured a powerful magical blast, which he threw at me with such speed that I had no time to react to it, and I ended up getting blasted into the door with so much force that it felt like I could have smashed through it and into the previous room. Ganondorf merely laughed when he saw me hit the door in such a manner, and I was feeling as though he were ridiculing me. Before I could even muster up some kind of counterattack, he then flung a second magical attack which connected with the same speed, causing me to drop to both knees.
"Have you grown weaker during these past 7 years? Or perhaps you aren't as strong as originally suspected? Either way, this has become rather dull. I've only just started, and your attempts at manipulating me won't work,"
I said.
"Yes, I was told how strong of a resilience you possess, yet that will not save you from my magic,"
said Tyrek. As he flung another magic ball, I raised my mirror shield which absorbed the attack, but there was some slight knockback that pushed me into the door again.
Most would be close to death, yet you appear willing to continue. Perhaps you are stronger than I thought, but we shall discover this as we proceed, yet choosing defense is going to fail eventually as you must use power if you hope to prove your claim. I've been through a lot worse than this,
I said.
Such pain amuses me,
said Tyrek.
Of course, I've managed to overcome challenges by using potions in order to keep on going, yet there have been times where I've prevailed when I have no means of regaining my strength,
I said.
So you rely on items as a crutch, do you?
Asked Tyrek.
Only someone like you would twist my meaning around,
I replied.
By all means use such healing methods if you believe it will help you survive, but eventually you will run out. Of course, I can always shatter them at any moment, yet I'll give you a chance just because this amuses me to no end.
Laughed Tyrek. He was really intending on intimidating me to the point where I will lose control of my emotions. Does he seriously want the same experience as what happened before? What would convince him to think of such a stupid idea? No, I'm not going to transform that way if I can help it, for that would be a disaster. I will transform when I feel like I've gotten control of the situation, and hopefully when I'm on the verge of prevailing, but should push come to shove then I'll be forced to change much sooner should he dominate like he is right now. Ganondorf then fired another magical attack which I attacked with the Master Sword because I finally remembered that this is what I did against Phantom Ganon back in the Forest Temple, yet the evil king knew what I was trying to do, and knocked his own attack back at me with his hand. This reflected magic came at me with even more speed that I got hit yet again which flung me into the door.
This isn't going very well, I said. You need to remember that Ganondorf is stronger than Phantom Ganon was, and because of that he will bounce his own magic attack back and forth for a much lengthier time. I'm not sure what will happen if he were struck with his own magic, for it's possible he might be immune to it, but we'll know soon enough,
said Spike. It was just like playing tennis except things were more serious as my life was on the line, so I need to match his volleys with my own and hope I come out on top.
Your resilience is commendable, yet it begins to annoy me,
said Tyrek.
If it bothers you so much, stop talking and do something about it,
I shouted.
You'll regret those words,
said Tyrek. He raised his hand and fired another magical attack which I knocked back with my sword, and he responded by knocking it back using his hand. Then I hit it again where it sailed back to where it came from, and he used his cape to send it my way again where I answered by hitting it again. This went on for a while where we knocked this one attack backwards and forwards until Ganondorf could no longer keep up, which was surprising because my assumption was that I'd be the one who fails. When his own magic struck him, the evil king became unable to do anything, and it revealed to me that he didn't like being punished with his own power as though his body couldn't handle it.
Now what do?
I asked.
This could be the chance to use the light arrows, but you need to be quick before he recovers,
replied Spike. I knew that I wasn't going to fire an arrow at him on time as recovered, and merely laughed at my attempt which felt disheartening. He then threw another magical attack where I began repeating the process because I knew now what needed to be done, yet the volley didn't last as long. When his own magic struck him again, I quickly took out the fairy bow and fired a light arrow hoping it would do something, and it did, for when it struck Ganondorf, the power of the light hit him several times before he dropped down and landed on the pillar where he struggled to get back onto his feet. Knowing that this must be his weak point, I made my way over by jumping across the gap, and then letting him have it as many times as possible by striking him consecutively with the master's sword. After hitting him enough times, he finally got back to his feet where he resumed floating in the air, yet his expression was one of sheer amusement instead of anger.
"So you can fight after all,"
said Tyrek.
"Don't underestimate me just because I don't have experience," I said. "I merely wanted to see if you could live up to my expectations, and so far you have not disappointed me. This attack pattern I've been using is too easy for you, so let's see if you can handle what I have in store for you next,"
said Tyrek. He then thrust his hand out which fired a thunderbolt which electrocuted me on the spot, and I was really feeling it coursing through my body. When I dropped to both knees after suffering such an experience, Ganondorf repeated his attack where I found myself being shocked again while he laughed at my misery. If I don't do something quickly, I'll be as good as dead. To be continued. Chapter 71, Madness and Escape.